Eh, can't argue that logic. We opened this week with Kana actually signing her employment papers with Magilumiere, which you'd think she'd have to do before firing a Starlight Breaker into a skyscraper just for insurance purposes, but whatever, as at least on her end, she was going to get a bunch of different benefits.
車保以外に魔法少女保険が適用される。健康診断は年に一度実施。
Well, just as long as she gets the most important coverage.
Dental plan.
They also explained how much of her paycheck would actually come from commissions, aka Kai exterminations, on top of her base salary. I'm pretty sure this is a fairly common system, especially in Asian countries, for jobs that involve infrequent work, and does make a lot of sense in the context of this sort of world, so good stuff that also highlighted what our heroines were fighting for. Yeah, obviously the money, but it also reflected the lives they were protecting. And in a really effective bit of paralleling, we then cut over to a more stereotypical, soulless big corpo that treated its employees like crap, and it was being dealt by this guy who sounded like every final boss ever.
10万円なんだ。君に取れるのはその利益でも3分間。
Damn, Cologne became a bit of a putz after he lost his fairy mascot gig. But yeah, Kei Koga here was rather on the nose with how much of an unfeeling exec he was. I mean, not to say he's inaccurate in any way, and again, at least him and his company, the AST, contrasted effectively with the smaller, yet more amiable startup company we were following. And on that note, a month just kind of passed since Kana joined, and they would end up having their first encounter with AST while trying to exterminate the Sandman from Spider-Man 3. But yeah, they were kill-stealed by this obvious rival character named Mei Tsuchiba. Surprisingly though, she was rather reasonable and acknowledged that the commission was contracted to Magilumiere, so they would still receive their money. Thus, Hitomi was actually being overly antagonistic here, even if AST was still clearly shady as all hell. Though she also seemed to hold some sort of prejudice against the company that also seemed to have a bunch of trees growing inside and out of it. Gee, I wonder if this is going to involve a certain tree in Norse mythology that anime just really likes to bring up all the damn time. Hell, this wouldn't even be the first time that Koga's VA was involved in such a show. Speaking of whom, he seemed to have some sort of history with Shigemoto, and not just through the Fourth Holy Grail War. The next day, Kana gave a little more interesting world building about how the magical girl business was still a fairly new industry, with almost all companies being on the smaller side and not making it past their first decade. Thus, AST lasting as long as it had was legit impressive, at least compared to the company this show was named after.
ロマンとはリボンを短くまとめるマスコット製だ。
それじゃあ魔法少女の
The precure Reddit in a nutshell. That said, Hitomi did hint that there was a little more to their boss beyond his cosplay obsession. Then again, she also had no real authority on that matter.
お前はリボンどっちがいいと思う？
私は衣装全部ジャージがいいっすね。
Her half-assed arc in Tropical Rouge must have really affected her. Anyway, they got their next job, which was to exterminate a bunch of smaller Kai that were terrorizing a wide area. Thus, for such an enemy, an AoE or wide-range attack would be the most efficient way of dealing with it, which even Little Miss by-the-books Kana agreed with. However, for reasons he wouldn't bother to really explain, Shigemoto was opposed to it.
美学にかなってない。
仕事って美学のためにやるのかな？
Well, it should be, at least if you want to make some sales. But yeah, as great as some of the storytelling has been in this episode, this was the one part that just kind of irked me. I mean, thankfully, it wouldn't lead to any sort of bad fallouts with Kana or anything, but it does feel a little forced not to tell her that they were concerned about property damage, which Kana herself would be aware of, considering what happened in the last episode. Still, I do get why they did, as a major running theme of this episode has been to highlight the parallels between Magilumiere and AST, as we learned that Koga also would have gone with an AoE attack. Though while Kana wanted to do it just because that's what the manual said, he wanted to do it because...
Well, the chart says...
Yeah, both were being cold and calculating, but after scoping out the area, Kana at least realized that they might also end up damaging a place that held a ton of sentimental value to the people who lived there.
人の時間奪って何ちんたら退治してんだか。
And to be fair, he's not wrong there. As of course, a world like this that was well aware of the Kai would have insurance plans against him, and the area did seem to be covered, but even if it were fully repaired, it just wouldn't be the same. It's a good conundrum as both sides, the more personable Magilumiere and the more efficient AST, both brought up some good points over whether or not it's the right thing to damage a place that's considered to be a landmark to many while a ton of monsters were running loose. That said, they didn't seem to have many other options aside from the AoE, as the Kai were already replicating. There was an idealistic option of launching an attack from the sewers where they were growing and leaving the above ground mostly undamaged. However, I guess their AoE attack wouldn't work underground, and yet the episode ended with Shigimoto saying that they'll figure something out for sure.
We're all gonna die.
An after credits scene showed what said boss man's morning was like, which was depressingly similar to mine, though to be fair, I don't rely on my DVR to record my Magical Girl anime, instead I just use some other method. This was yet another really effective episode to build up this world, mostly through just its characters. While not an outright villain, Koga does act as a very effective antagonist to really highlight the soulless nature of the big corpos of the world against small companies like Magilumiere. It makes it clear that we should be cheering for our underdogs, but at the same time, it does still give nuances to the overdogs. As much as we might want to and should complain about how much power the big companies have over our society, the fact is that they only really got that way because they played it smart. Sure, AST will probably have some sort of shady side to it for the sake of conflict in this show, and their boss is just a plain jerk, but I do like that they are also proving a point that sometimes efficiency shouldn't be prioritized over feelings. Not always, but enough so that problems can be solved with minimal loss. By doing so, it will help to highlight the accomplishments of the Magilumiere a lot more later. I mean, obviously, they're going to try to find some sort of solution to deal with the Kai that'll act as a middle ground between efficiency and their idealism, which is a conflict that I always like to see. It's something that can also lead to some great character writing, as highlighted how Kana even kind of indirectly sided with Koga until she realized the damages they could cause. It's a typical heroic moral quandary that also works well with the show's commentary about the importance of small businesses versus the big corpos. And overall, this is just a great part 1, to hopefully a very satisfying second part next week. Whatever the outcome, we at least know that one company manages to keep it real against another offshoot of Jeff Bezos' greed. Thank you for watching, and as usual, be sure to check out some of our other videos. We're starting to experiment with some longer, short videos, as we were supposed to get 3 minutes for them starting this week, but that's kind of been delayed until next month. I don't know for sure, but for now, we'll at least make the Boom Booja reviews a little longer. Look forward to that, and a lot more. Until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I've got some of my own business I need to do. Check me out on Macari if you want.